Okay, we're going to get started. So first of all, I'd like to introduce you to myself. My name is Kim Rutherford. I am a psychotherapist with a private practice in Liverpool, but I also work a lot online on an international scale. I'm a mental wellness specialist, which pretty much means that I focus primarily on mental health prevention rather than just working with people who've already been diagnosed with mental health issues and having to go through a recovery process with them. I can do both and will happily do both. I'm just a firm advocate for prevention is better than cure. So we can prevent the issue, then we're in a better situation to manage mental health in general. For those of you who can't see me, you're not really missing much. Short and dumpy with longish hair. That's pretty much where I go. The accent, as you will notice, although I live in Liverpool, is not a Scouse accent. That's because I call myself a Scouse bumpkin, which means although I was born in Liverpool and live there again now, I actually grew up in Somerset in the South Coast. So you will probably hear a little bit of change in the accent with certain words. So be prepared for a little bit of Scouse to come out every now and then potentially, and a little bit as we go through this as well. And the aim of today's session is really just to introduce you to how to manage stress in order to give you some idea of the importance of managing stress in order to reduce the risk that high levels of stress actually have not only on your mental health, but also on your physical health as well. We know across the UK, across the world at the moment, mental health is increasing on the agenda, and it needs to. We do have a crisis of mental health. We had a mental health crisis on an international scale way before we had a pandemic, and the pandemic has just made that worse. So we know that most people surrounding us will be experiencing high levels of stress and all of the knock-on effects of those high levels of stress as well. So just to reiterate, if you don't mind just popping yourselves on mute throughout the duration of the session, and then we'll just come off of mute at the end to give you all a bit of chance to ask questions. Feel free to, I've got the chat box up on my screen in front of me, so I will try and have a look at what's being said as we go along. I will genuinely try and answer as many questions as we can as we go through. So what we're hoping now is that it all works perfectly. So some general housekeeping. Feel free to keep your video on, as I've said, during the session, but please mute your microphones because we want to reduce as much background noise as possible. Please use the chat for any issues, any problems that you're experiencing, plus any questions that you might have. Automated captions are provided, so please turn them on if you need them. Go to the toolbar, click on the 3 dots, select Turn on Captions from the drop-down menu. And if you need a BSL interpreter, please message at help desk or write a message in the chat. TechShare Pro is an inclusive event. Please familiarize yourself with the code of conduct, all saved in the files. So as I said, I hope you're comfortable, and let's talk about stress. What I want to talk about today primarily is 3 core areas. Number 1 is the dysfunctional stress cycle. It is the dysfunctional stress cycle, or when you enter a dysfunctional stress cycle, that you start to feel the impact of that mentally and physically. And it's the dysfunctional stress cycle that puts you at risk by having issues with regards to your mental health and also physical health as well. I also want to give you an opportunity during this session to assess your own levels of stress. And I'm providing a very basic tool that you can use today or take away with you, that you can use with friends, with family, with colleagues, or again for yourself, to help you monitor your stress levels and know when to implement something to help bring them down. And also I want you to leave today with some basic tools and techniques for managing stress, again, that you can use for yourself, but you can share again with friends, family, colleagues, and employees if you need to. The key message from this session really is that stress is one of the core triggers of mental health conditions. And so if we can start learning how to manage stress really effectively, or be able to identify stress-related issues in others, we can help start to prevent those longer-term mental health and physical health issues that people have that are connected to stress. So let's start with the basics. Let's give you some indication of where stress statistics currently lie. So every single year with regards to mental health, the stats are collated over the 12-month period. So the stats I want to share with you now are the stats collated from 2019. We know that these stats are going to increase dramatically for 2020 because we can already see more and more individuals requiring support and assistance with regards to stress and mental health related issues. So we will know more about that towards the end of 2020. But what tends to happen, the pattern of statistics with regards to international pandemics, is that we tend to see an increase of approximately 10% on any of the stats that you see before you. But with lockdown added in, we probably will see that becoming a little bit higher, potentially towards the 15% mark. So we're looking at a stat of 74% of UK adults have felt so stressed out at some point over the last year that they felt so overwhelmed they were unable to cope. So this means when their stress levels have increased to such an extent that their cognitive function stops working effectively and they're no longer in the process of being able to manage the things that are happening to them in their life. Of that 74%, 81% are women and 67% are men. 83% are aged between 18 and 24, and 65% are over 25. Based on that, it would appear that women experience stress more than men. This is not actually a fact. What this tends to be, what we are finding with regards to mental health in general, is that women are a little bit more willing and open to talk about the subject. And therefore, we'd probably find that the male stats would increase equally as much if they were more willing to talk about it. And there's a big project taking place at this moment with regards to mental health with men, with the concept of just talk, reach out and just talk, because we are seeing higher stats happening with regards to male suicide and male mental health issues. And with regards to those adults who are experiencing high levels of stress, 32% of them have also experienced suicidal feelings as a result of stress. And this is the first time that I really want to stress to you, no pun intended, the importance of being able to manage your stress. Because when it escalates, it can escalate quickly. When it starts to trigger other mental health conditions, that can happen very quickly. And if there is no support, or if there is no light at the end of the tunnel for that person, and then those people choose to end that way themselves. And as I said, we are seeing high increases in suicide rates currently. So we're trying to prevent that as much as we can, hence the importance of learning how to manage your stress. But those with suicidal feelings, we've got 35% of women and 29% of men, and we're starting to see those stats get closer together between the genders. 39% of those are 18 to 24-year-olds and 25% are 55-year-olds. With regards to suicide rates currently in the UK alone, we can see a massive increase in suicide for males under the age of 25, to the extent that you're almost 10 times more likely to die of a suicide than you are of a knife crime in the UK at this current moment in time. But we're also seeing an increase with regards to over 55s, over 55s. And the over 55s have been hit quite a lot with recessions and economic crisis. When we've got high levels of redundancy, those that struggle to bounce back as quickly tend to be those of 55 and over. And they are also the people who have more responsibilities to juggle. They're usually homeowners, married, children, possibly children who are off getting married themselves or at university level. They may be caring for other parents, they might be caring for other people. So there tends to be an awful lot more responsibility attached to that particular age group. And 16% of adults have claimed that they have self-harmed as a result of stress. We're looking at 18% of those are women and 13% of those are men. 29% are aged between 18 to 24 and 6% are over 55s. We're seeing again an increase with regards to the 18 to 24-year-old group. And we're seeing that a lot with mental health in general as we stand at this moment in time. The younger generations tend to be feeling that stress an awful lot more. There is a lot of arguments for why that is. Obviously, social media playing one of the biggest arguments there is. But that's to give you some idea of where stress is currently lying. And as I said, it really, really is important to understand what causes your stress and how to manage that stress in order to prevent any longer term mental health and physical health conditions. They come very much hand in hand. The truth of stress is that we are built to experience it. We're built to manage it. We have an inbuilt system for it. And that system allows us to feel stress, to use our body to then fight through those issues. It helped us to survive. It's helped us to evolve. If you think about it as a time when we were in the caveman years, being able to respond to scary and dangerous situations such as lions, tigers, bears, and just the elements, our stress levels were there to indicate that level of danger. And the chemical release from stress allows us to then respond more effectively to that danger, getting ourselves out of that situation whatever way we can. Our stress release hormones are almost like our superpowers. So if you've ever experienced high levels of stress, but in a controlled manner, in a level that you can handle, it's almost like your sight becomes piercing. You can see things clearly. You can hear things clearly. And you hear people saying, I work at my best when I'm most stressed. And that's because they're able to use that chemical release to their advantage. But not everybody can do that. And so it's really understanding where your level is and trying to keep yourself within that level. On the screen in front of you, there is a picture of a bucket. And at the base of the bucket are there some core holes in the bucket, and the bucket is full of water. So at the bottom of the bucket, you get water released through those holes. And the concept of the bucket, it represents where your stress is. The water is representing all of the life events and life issues that cause you stress. They create the water in the bucket. And the filter at the bottom, those holes are allowing the stress to be released. Now, you create the filter through implementing stress management programs and techniques, or self-care. And the key is to always have the self-care. Now, although the bucket image is good, I'm a firm believer in the bath image instead. So I just want you to spend a second visualizing. Imagine your bath at home, or a bath that you've seen or experienced. With a bath, you always have the plug in, and it represents your life. The plug always has to be in, because you always have to, if you're engaged with life, you have to experience life. So you have to be able to capture everything in there. The tap and the water represents life and the life events that are always coming through to you. As with every bath, just underneath the tap, there is a filter that allows the bath water to release through the filter to prevent it from overflowing. And that represents your stress level, where your stress level sits. And everybody's stress level will be slightly different based on the life that they've lived to date. If the water keeps coming in, and if you manage the water effectively through the filter with really good self-care, then the stress will never become higher than the actual filter. But if you don't, the water will keep coming into that bathtub. Your stress will keep coming into your life. That bath water will increase and increase and increase, and eventually it will overflow the bath. It will come onto the floor, ruin the floor. It will then work through the ceilings to the rooms below, and eventually it will damage your entire house. And that's the same with stress. If you don't manage it, and you allow it to become overwhelming, it starts to overflow. And when it overflows, it then starts to take hold of different parts of your body, different parts of your brain. And that's when it can then lead into severe mental health conditions, affecting and ruining all the cognitive function that you've currently got when you're not stressed. So when you're thinking about managing your stress, and it can get very easy get caught up with, I don't have time for this. Be realistic about what you're saying you don't have time for. Because what you're saying is, I don't have time to care for myself. I don't have time to look after myself. And I don't have time to keep my health in peak condition. That's what you're actually saying. So it's really important to understand how stress functions quickly and how it implements all areas of your life if you don't manage it effectively. So key takeaways from this is stress will keep coming. If you don't learn to let it out, it will affect your overall wellness and well-being, and therefore your performance, not just professional performance, but your daily performance. And if you don't develop and maintain a good level of wellness, it could lead to mental health issues and physical health issues. That is why self-care is so important. And on the screen in front of you now, what you've got is a large head. And really, I want to try and explain to you what causes stress. And the large head basically represents the conditioned mind that you all have. And your conditioned mind has been developed through every experience you have had since birth. Our brains are amazing. They are wonderful. They store everything. And from this, you get two types of stress factors. You get the internal stress factors that are created by the conditioned mind that you have developed through your life. And you have the external stress factors that are created by the life events that happen around you. You have zero control over the external stress factors. You will only ever respond to them. But you can have some control over the internal stress factors by adapting that conditioned mindset to be able to respond in a more positive way that suits you and your mental health better. So an example of external stress factors that are happening to you that you respond to: work-related stress, relationships that could be with friends, family, intimate relationships, or work colleagues. Financial issues can cause a lot of levels of stress or high levels of stress. Time and workload, how busy you are leads to your stress levels. And children and all of the life events that come with having children or interacting with children on a regular basis. This is just some examples of the external stress factors that can create stress for you. But your conditioned mind, if you have led a life where your conditioned mind has things such as an inability to accept uncertainty, which is a very nice way of saying you need to be in control. So the concept of being a control freak is really somebody who has an inability to accept uncertainty. Pessimism. Pessimism is a mindset that comes from feeling a lack of trust towards people and towards situations. There is also negative self-talk. And what happens with negative self-talk, it is usually planted by someone else. It starts with a conversation that happened at a certain stage in your life, and it plants a seed of self-doubt. And then you eventually take on that dialogue as if it's your own. And when you do that, that's when it becomes stronger and stronger, and when it becomes its most damaging. Then you've got people who set unrealistic expectations for themselves. Perfectionism. Perfectionism is one of the core triggers for people with mental health conditions, especially with high levels of stress, with the reality being that nobody can ever reach the goals that are set when set under a perfectionist mindset. So unrealistic expectations are a huge issue when it comes to stress. And victim or blame mindset, because when we look externally to place the blame, we give up the power and the control that we do have, and that actually creates more external life events that we have to respond to. So the key with stress is understanding ourselves well enough to be able to manage how we respond to that stress in the moment. So it comes from external stress factors and internal stress factors. We are using our internal stress factors to respond with the external stress factors. And if our internal conditioned mind has its own issues, it has those particular issues, so that the need for control, pessimism, negative self-talk, unrealistic expectations, or a need to blame or see yourself as a victim, then you are going to respond less positively to any form of external stress. And the way the brain works explains to you how that stress is released into the body. So on the screen in front of you, you've got an image that gives you insight into some of the core areas of the brain. And we really only need to focus on 3 of these core areas for this session. First bit, right at the front of the brain, right behind the forehead, sits your prefrontal cortex. And your prefrontal cortex is where all of the decision-making part of your brain lies. Ever make starts here. But the way it works is it actually communicates directly with a part of the brain called the hippocampus. And the hippocampus sits right in the center of the brain. And this is where all of your memories are stored. The ability to learn is stored in this part of the brain. And so every single day when you have to make the thousands of decisions that you have to make, your prefrontal cortex is faced with a situation. It needs to make a decision. It talks directly to the hippocampus, and the hippocampus provides it with visuals to help it make the decision. So for example, if you needed to open a door, your prefrontal cortex asks your hippocampus, how do I open a door? Your hippocampus will then send an image a strong image of when you've experienced opening a door before, and it will tell that to the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex then uses that to make the decision on how to open the door. Another way to demonstrate this is if I say to you to think of an elephant, that communication has gone to your prefrontal cortex. Your prefrontal cortex has just asked your hippocampus of what is an elephant? Give me a visual of an elephant. And your hippocampus has provided you with what you perceive is an elephant. And that, I imagine, is the image that you have come into your mind. It happens in a split second. That's how wonderful the human brain is. But because it happens so quickly, it gives you some indication of how quickly stress can happen as well. Because if you imagine the prefrontal cortex asks the hippocampus for something, but the memory the hippocampus releases is something that makes you feel like you're in danger. Could be anything. It could be somebody's asked you to do something in work, and the last time you did that in work, the hippocampus remembers that you felt anxious about it or you didn't get it right. When your brain has that communication, it sets off the next part of the brain, which is the amygdala. The amygdala looks like it's about an almond shape, and it sits just under the hippocampus, and it sits either side of your core part of the brain. And what that does, I like to call it the bat phone of the brain, because when that senses that you're in danger, when the hippocampus has released any form of imagery or emotional connection to what the prefrontal cortex is trying to do, that messages to say it's a danger, you've experienced danger with this before, the amygdala sets off like a bat phone, like a big alarm in your head. And what that does is it triggers your fight or flight process, your inbuilt system for managing stress. It releases a range of chemicals and a range of adrenalines around your body. These then move to all the different parts of your body, creating some form of physical response as well as a mental response, which is why you don't necessarily know you're in stress, because you might only respond to the stress when you're feeling it physically rather than when you're feeling it mentally. But it's all done through these three core areas of the brain. The prefrontal cortex, right behind the forehead, the hippocampus, right in the center, and the amygdala, sitting just underneath the hippocampus. And what they do is they set off your survival system, the survival system commonly known as fight, flight. But also there's two other areas to it. Your fight response is exactly that. It's when you were going to have to fight your way out of a situation. So what happens in that, the brain has gone and sent those triggers and your body starts to prepare for a fight. So your muscles tense up, really ready. The adrenaline starts pumping inside of you in order to get you in the mood to have a fight. So physically, you will feel your chest beating really hard as the adrenaline is increased quite dramatically. You will get those palpitations. You will feel a flush of heat as the blood rushes around your body, raising your blood pressure quite quickly. Your muscles will ache as if you've been 10 rounds in the gym, ready to fight out of a situation. It feels physically exhausting if you go into fight mode. If you go into flight mode, it's slightly different. Think of a hot air balloon. In order to make itself rise more and go faster, you have to let go of all the sandbags. And it's the same when you go into flight mode. For those people who respond in flight mode, you tend to feel nauseous. You tend to have issues with your bowels and intestines and stomach and gut area, because flight wants to remove any liquids that might make you heavy. The concept being you've got to be fast and get out of the situation very quickly. Sometimes freeze mode, and the freeze mode is when you literally shut down. There's no function going on at all. Your body just doesn't know what to do. And what we're really trying to do with stress is move through those three stages as quickly as possible to get towards the face situation. Because the face situation is when you are able to function effectively. You're able to engage with the actual situation that's happening. You're able to problem solve that situation, and you're able to move forward from it, reducing the stress that's linked to it, but also creating a new memory and a new experience that is positive, that the hippocampus can hold on to. And so that's the importance of stress management, being able to build up enough new catalogue that those things that you felt were dangerous beforehand no longer feel dangerous. Or being able to provide yourself with more tools and techniques that even when they do feel dangerous to you, you're able to manage them more effectively so they don't have a longer term effect. Because if you don't learn to manage them effectively, they move into the dysfunctional stress cycle. And your dysfunctional stress cycle is when a life event happens that then triggers any form of negative thinking. When the negative thinking happens, it then triggers negative feelings. And for some people, they may get the feelings first and then the thinking secondary. But these two go hand in hand, and they are always a response to a life event that's happened. When you either feel negatively or you think negatively, you will have physical symptoms. And because we don't feel comfortable with physical symptoms, we then implement a strategy for managing them. And if that strategy becomes self-defeating or otherwise known as a self-defeating behavior, what it can then do is trigger a new negative life event that then creates more negative thinking, more negative feelings, more physical symptoms that you feel the need to respond to. And before you know it, you are in this hugely negative, dysfunctional cycle on a hamster on a wheel that you can't get off of. So it's really, excuse me, it's really, really important that you're able to get out of that cycle. And on the screen in front of you is that cycle to demonstrate how it can just go round and round and round. And some of the self-defeating behaviors I'm talking about is when you go into absolute denial, excuse me. When you go into denial and you just refuse to accept the situation as it is, or you refuse to accept that you're struggling to cope. Alcohol or self-medicating under any circumstances is classed as a self-defeating behavior. So for example, if you are that one person who needed a drink after work because it was a bad day, then bad day 2 happens, so it was 2 drinks. You can see how quickly alcohol can start to get out of control. You start to lose self-care, which means you stop looking after yourself. This is when we start to see a physical change in people. Hygiene is one of the first things to go. Isolation, and you start to see depression kicking in. Self-defeating behaviors when relationship issues start to happen, when you start to either blame all the people around you or you start to take your issues out on those people. Increased levels of smoking becoming a health issue. Eating issues. Some people choose not to eat when they're really stressed. Other people eat more. I'm an eat more person. And then you get irregular sleep patterns. So it's either you can't sleep, so you stay up longer, or you're trying to resolve the issues that are causing the stress, so you work longer hours, which you then stay up longer. So irregular sleep patterns can come from self-defeating behaviors. But all of this has a huge impact on you mentally and physically. And on the screen in front of you, there is an image of the human body giving you some indication of the different parts of the body that stress affects. The first place, the brain and the nerve system at the top there. You will feel things such as severe headaches. You will start to have feelings of despair and a lack of energy. You'll start to feel incredible levels of sadness, nervousness, anger, irritability, trouble concentrating because your brain can't function properly. You'll have memory problems because your hippocampus can't provide you with the information that you need. There'll be difficulty in sleeping, potentially insomnia, and it can lead to mental health disorders such as anxiety, panic attacks, and depression. Stress is a huge issue for creating mental health issues. You will experience heart issues. Your heart becomes faster, and those palpitations rise your blood pressure, which can put you in increased risk of high cholesterol, heart attacks, and also strokes. Your stomach becomes affected, too much nausea, you get severe stomach aches, really bad heartburn. You tend to get weight gain, and you get weight gain because one of the chemicals released into the body from stress is cortisol. Cortisol triggers and increases insulin levels, and too many insulin levels then turns into fat. So we've got a situation with weight gain because of the cortisol levels, which then puts you increased or decreased appetite. So you can either have lots of weight gain, but you're not eating anywhere near as much, which causes psychological issues with regards to eating, where we can possibly see eating disorders coming from. We then got an issue with all of that happening. The pancreas can't cope properly, which puts you increased risk of diabetes. The intestines can't work properly and can't function properly. Hence, you see either diarrhea, constipation, and other digestive problems. In fact, people with mental health issues or high levels of stress tend to also partner with people who've got IBS. That's not to say that everybody with irritable bowel syndrome has mental health issues, but it is very possible that it was triggered by stress. The reproductive organs can also be affected. For women, irregular painful periods and a reduced sexual desire. And for men, we're looking at impotence, low sperm production, and reduced sexual desire. We see a lot of this with regards to people trying to get pregnant. The more stress they put on themselves, the less chance they have of getting pregnant. And we've seen an awful lot of women actually become pregnant when they've stopped trying and relaxed the body a lot more. And other areas, we're also looking at acne and skin problems, muscle aches and muscle tension, increased risk for low bone density, and a weakened immune system. And I just want to focus on that one right now, the weakened immune system. We need to have a strong immune system at this stage, not just because we have a global pandemic, but also because this is the time of year that we tend to get sick with an awful lot of areas. And if we don't want those sicknesses to lead to low mortality rates, then obviously we need to build our immune systems as well. So the key to stress is always going to be increase and improve the ways you look after your mental health, your wellness and well-being, and that will help you manage the stress and protect both your longer-term mental health and physical health issues. What I've got in front of you here is a stress test. And as I said, I use this with every one of my clients, both in my private practice and in my training academy as well. It's just a really simple tool to map where your current stress levels might be. What you've got in front of you on the screen there is 15 different symptoms that are linked to dysfunctional stress. And all I need you to do is read, and I will read them through with you, is rate yourself either 0 to 4 on how often you feel that particular symptom. If it's never, it's a 0. If it's rarely, it's a 1. If it's occasionally, it's a 2. Frequently, it's a 3. And very frequently, it's a 4. So number 1 is feeling of sadness. So if you ever feel sad, are you a 0, a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4? Number 2 is moodiness. So how much your mood swings and how much you find yourself in more of a negative mood. Again, rating yourself 0 to 4. Number 3 is low energy levels, lethargic. How often do you feel lethargic? Number 4 is excessive feelings of guilt. Guilt is an incredibly strong emotion. So do you ever feel excessive feelings of guilt? Number 5 is crying spells. Those kind of crying that just happen, feeling highly emotional. How often do you feel like that? How often do you feel, number 6, a lower interest in things that should be and are usually considered fun? When you almost like you're sat there involved, but it feels like you're almost sat outside of the bubble, not being able to connect to the interest of what's actually happening. Number 7 is feelings of low self-esteem, not being good enough, not being worthy enough, not having that self-belief. Number 8 is decreased interest in sex. Number 9 is how often do you have negative sensitivity to smells and odors? So what happens in high levels of stress is your nose can become incredibly strong, so you can start smelling things really, really, really clearly, things that nobody else might be able to smell. Number 10 is forgetfulness. Now, obviously, forgetfulness can happen to a lot of people for lots of different reasons, but have a think about how often you might be getting just forgetful. It might just be the odd word or the odd memory that you're trying to recall. Number 11 is poor concentration. Number 12 is feelings, or your feelings are often hurt. So a sensitivity to what other people say and do around you. Number 13 is how often do you feel overwhelmed by normal everyday tasks? Number 14 is do you find yourself oversensitive to criticism more than you have done in the past? And 15, is if you are lacking in confidence in your own abilities to do things that you have always been able to do and have felt confident about before. Now, after you've rated each one of these 15, what you then need to look at is be able to identify how many of them are rated either a 3 or a 4. If you have rated 5 of these symptoms as either a 3 or a 4, so 5 or more, then it's highly likely that your brain is in extreme levels of stress and you've moved quite heavily into a dysfunctional stress cycle. And as we know, the dysfunctional stress cycle has that big impact on all levels of your body, but it also has a huge impact on your brain as well. What happens is, on the screen in front of you, you've got 2 MRI images. The right-hand side is an optimal brain function, and the left-hand side is a stressed and depressed brain function. The optimal brain function, as you can see, it's a fatter brain. It is lit up in light blue and turquoise and yellow. The blues and the turquoise demonstrate how much liquid you have around your brain, and the light demonstrates how much function you have in your brain. And as you can see on the stressed and depressed image there, the brain has shrunk. We've got a lot more dark blue and black, and that gives you some indication of where it's drying up. The black genuinely demonstrates the holes that you've got in your brain. And as you can see, there's less yellow, less of the brain is lit up because there's less function. What has genuinely happened with high levels of stress is your brain has shrunk and it has become inflamed. Because in order for your body to put into place that fear, fight or flight process, all of the blood, all of the oxygen has moved to the different parts of your body and it's moved away from your brain. So when you get that groggy head, you can't see the wood for the trees, you can't make decisions, you can't think straight. That's what's happening to your brain. Now, the great thing is you can get your brain back to being an optimal brain function again, but you have to put in the effort, you have to put in the tools and techniques to do that. And I want to share just a couple of those with you today so you can take them away with you. Again, in front of you is the lovely bucket of stress there. But it's just to really demonstrate to you the types of things you need to do to help filter the water out of your stress bucket or out of your bathtub. Number 1 is relax the breathing. You've got to relax the breathing. You've got to get the lungs full up again. You need to get the right levels and quantities of oxygen back into your brain. Secondly, you then need to relax the body because you're carrying so much tension there, it stops the body functioning the way it needs to. You then need to relax the mind so you can think clearly again. You then need to relax the pace of which you are working because the pace is generating high levels of stress. You then need to learn how to change your response to your stress. And the good one, you need to get healthy. You need to get fit, you need to get active, you need to get the right amount of nutrients in your body to be able to effectively have a physical, healthy body. So the first one I want to teach you today is literally how to breathe in a relaxing way, how to breathe effectively, which might sound, as I appreciate every one of you is breathing quite well now. But actually the key is learning how to deep breathe effectively and then manage that breathing to be able to calm the body down. The first thing you need to realize is you never do what we call mouth breathing. You never breathe in through the mouth and out through the mouth. That is a guaranteed way to lead to hyperventilation. So you need to learn to breathe, always breathe in through the nose and then breathe out through the mouth. And then you need to learn how to do a deep breath. And the best way to demonstrate a deep breath is if you put your hand on your tummy, if you breathe in through your nose, you should feel your tummy starts to expand like a big balloon. And then when you breathe out, it will deflate again. That is the level of breathing that you need to learn to do when trying to calm yourself. And the exercise you've got in front of you is a box on the screen, and we call this box breathing. And it's brilliant for calming you during stress, anxiety, or panic attacks. And it only takes a couple of minutes to do. But the concept is if you were to start at the bottom right-hand corner of a square, you breathe in at a count of 4 along the right-hand side of the square. When you get to 4, you then hold your breath for a count of 4 as you move along the top of the square. And then you breathe out for a count of 4 as you move down the left-hand side of the square. And then you hold your breathing again for a count of 4 as you come on across the bottom line of the square back to your starting position. And you repeat that about 1 to 3 times. You can use that image in your head of going around the box, or you can simply just focus on just the counting. But what this does, it will calm your breathing down. It will get the air, as I said, back into your lungs properly and get the oxygen flowing where you need to do. So close your eyes when you do it. Always breathe in through your nose while counting to 4 and feel the air enter those lungs. Hold your breath inside while counting slow to 4. Try not to clamp your mouth or shut your nose, just stop the process. And then exhale for 4 again, and then hold again, but always in through the nose and out through the mouth. And that is one technique you can use for managing your breathing. The second one is how to relax the body. And a way to relax the body is literally to be able to put your body into extreme tension. And I'm not going to talk you through this because you can do this at your own time, but literally what you do is from head to toe, and on the screen in front of you, I've just got all of this demonstrated clearly. And you literally just go from head to toe, tensing every part of your body up, holding it for 10 seconds, and then releasing it. And by going into extreme tension and releasing it all, you bypass the level of tension you might be where you are, and you put your body into a state of relaxation. The great thing about that is it's a brilliant exercise to do before you go to bed at night, especially if you struggle to relax. So relax the body head to toe through extreme tension and then relax it. And the final one is using your senses. What happens when we go into stress, we move our world into what we call our inner mind, which is inside our head. And what we need to do is reconnect with the external world to put us back into reality. And we need to use our senses to do that. And what I've got on the screen there is literally just an image that demonstrates each one of our 5 senses: an eye, an ear, a nose, a mouth, and a hand for touch. And for this exercise, you need to look around the room, look around the space, and be able to identify in your mind 5 things you can see. That will bring you visually back into reality, into the space that's around you, relaxing the mind. Then you focus on 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can smell, 2 things that you can touch. And the mouth does not represent taste, it represents voice. 1 thing you like about yourself. And the reason you do this is when you go into high levels of stress, you start becoming an internal bully, beating yourself up for the things that you can't do. And you need to counteract that by boosting your self-esteem. And so by voicing something you like about yourself, you start to build up that self-esteem again. These are 3 simple activities that you can do when you experience stress at any stage. And the great thing about them is a lot of the time you can go anywhere or be in a room and people wouldn't know you're doing them. But it's no one else's responsibility to manage your stress for you. It is yours. And as I said, the most important part of all of this is about preventing longer term mental health and physical health conditions like those I've already listed. So to summarize, if you don't manage your stress, it can turn into a dysfunctional stress cycle that can move towards mental health issues, but also physical health issues too. You need to be able to assess and review your own stress levels regularly. You need to develop resilience to manage stress in the moment, but also be able to implement a good self-care plan for effective stress management. And you need to develop your own stress tool belt. You are a very unique individual because of the experience you've had in your own life. Don't just rely on the tools that might work for somebody else. There are so many stress management tools out there. It's almost like try and test them before you make a decision on which ones you're going to use and which ones work for you. But it is your job to create your own tool belt. I don't want to sound harsh when I say that, but tough love is stress can lead to death. And so by creating a tool belt for yourself, you are actually preventing some of those longer term issues or dying prematurely. So that is the end of the session. I hope you have learned something or enjoyed it. If there's any questions, feel free to either pop them in the comments now or come off of mute and ask them right now. I'm going to stick around for a few minutes anyway. But if there is nobody who wants to ask questions today, but you would like to ask them again more privately, these are my contact details. Please feel free to get in touch, get in contact. I appreciate sometimes people don't want to say anything in these types of sessions, but feel free to contact me, email me, give me a call, send me a text, whatever, and I'll happily answer as many questions or help you out as much as I can if you need it. But other than that, thank you very much. Thanks for coming along. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. In true fashion, I'm here every day for the next 2 days at lunchtime covering different topics. So how do you handle stress with regards to disability discrimination? The issue that you've got, this is a classic example of the discrimination element is horrific, but you can't control that element. And so if you're responding in a way that you're wanting to try and take control of that, then that's going to heighten your stress levels because you can't control that situation. It's learning how to therefore let the stress out of the stress bucket afterwards so it doesn't become something that's internalized longer term. It's hard. It is such a hard thing when you know that you are being treated appallingly by something that you have no control over. So the only thing you can do is adjust. You have to adjust your response. I know that's probably not what you want to hear, and it's not what you should have to do, really, but it's the only thing you can do because we can't necessarily go all guns blazing and try and get somebody to change for us. I wish we could, and there's a big fight going on, and obviously everybody's here at the moment is trying to. The stress slides, as far as I'm aware, are already saved on the files somewhere here, so you should be able to get them today. I have got tips about pacing, Alana. So if you send me an email, I will send you some information on how to pace things a little better. There's an entire, almost like a personal project management process that you can follow in order to do that as well. So again, thank you, everybody. If you do want to contact me, so the details are there in front of me. But other than that, it'd be lovely to see you another day. Take care and look after yourselves, more importantly. Look after this bit, look after this bit. Take care. See you all soon.